Barbara and Patricia Grimes were teenage sisters who disappeared from the Brighton Park, Chicago, Illinois area on December 28, 1956, and were found dead on January 22, 1957. Despite an official conclusion that they had been murdered on the night of their disappearance, there were numerous sightings of the girls in the interim prior to their discovery. The confession of the initial prime suspect in the case were not found to line up with the forensic evidence, and later recanted. What exactly happened to the sisters and when remains unsolved to this day. On December 28, 1956, sisters Barbara, age 15, and Patricia, 13, students at Kelly High School in St. Maurice, respectively went to the Brighton Theatre to see the Elvis Presley movie Love Me Tender. The theatre was around 1.5 miles from their McKinley Park home. They had $2.50 between them, but it is unknown how they arrived at the theatre. Patricia's friend Dorothy Weinert sat behind the girls with her own younger sister during the movie. Weinert and her sister left the theater at the intermission of the double feature showing that night, about 9:30, and saw the Grimes girl in the popcorn line. And neither the Weinerts nor anyone else noticed anything unusual. The sisters stayed for the second film and were expected home around 11:45 p.m. When there was still no sign of them by midnight, their mother, Loretta, sent their older brother and sister to wait by the nearest bus stop for their arrival. After 3 buses had gone by with no sign of them, the siblings returned. At 2:15 a.m., their mother reported Barbara and Patricia as missing. Their disappearance launched one of the biggest missing person cases in Chicago history, producing many reports of sightings, but nothing in the way of hard evidence. It was initially thought that they might have simply run away, possibly to Nashville, to see Elvis Presley in concert. On January 19, 1957, Presley himself issued a statement. "If you are good Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries," he said. This is where the case gets really strange and bizarre. Between the last confirmed sighting of them at the movie theater and the subsequent discovery of their bodies on January 22nd, there were several unconfirmed sightings of the girls both in and outside the city. The most widely reported included: numerous people said that they saw the girls boarding a CTA bus on Archer Avenue, heading east into the city after the screening. They subsequently got off the bus at Western Avenue, about halfway to their home, around 11:05 p.m. Why they would get off the bus at this station is unknown. At approximately 11:30 p.m., 2 teenage boys driving through the neighborhood saw the sisters heading east on 35th Street, giggling and jumping out of doorways at each other near Sealy and Damon Avenues, approximately 2 blocks from their home. A security guard on the northwest side believed he was asked for directions by the Grimes girls near Lawrence and Central Park Avenues on the morning of December 29th. A classmate of Patricia's, eating at Angelo's restaurant at 3551 South Archer Avenue on the evening of December 29th, reported her as walking past with 2 other unidentified young girls. A railroad conductor reported seeing them on a train near the Great Lakes Naval Training Center in the north suburban Glenview. On December 30th at 5:40 a.m., the owner of the D&L restaurant at 3040 West Madison claimed to have seen both girls, with Patricia apparently too drunk or sick to walk without staggering, accompanied by suspect Benny Bedwell. This location was over 5.5 miles from the Brighton Theatre. A clerk at the Claremont Hotel, after viewing the bodies at the mortuary, likewise identified the sisters as having checked into the hotel on this date. On January 1st, 1957, the girls were reported aboard a CTA bus on Damon Avenue. The following week, a night clerk at the Unity Hotel on West 61st Street refused 2 girls a room because of their age, whom he believed were the Grimes sisters. On January 3rd, 3 employees at the Cressy department store thought that they had seen the girls listening to Elvis Presley music at the record counter. Adding credence to the theory that both sisters had run away to Nashville, a woman reported having met them at the bus station there and accompanied them to a state employment agency to search for work. A clerk at the same agency identified the sisters from photographs and recalled them using the name Grimes. On January 14th, the parents of Patricia Grimes' classmate Sandra Tolston received 2 telephone calls around midnight. During the first call, nobody at the other end spoke. Picking up the second phone call 15 minutes later, Sandra's mother Anne heard a frightened and depressed voice asking, "Is that you, Sandra? Is Sandra there?" Before Anne could bring her daughter to the phone, the caller had hung up. Anne was convinced that the caller's voice belonged to Patricia Grimes. Following a thaw and rain on January 22, 1957, a construction worker named Leonard Prescott found the nude bodies of the Grimes sisters behind a guardrail on German Church Road, about 200 feet east of County Line Road, in unincorporated Willow Springs, later incorporated as part of Willow Brook in 1960. It was thought that they had most likely been dumped there from a passing car. Barbara Grimes lay on her left side with her legs slightly drawn up toward her body. Patricia Grimes lay on her back, covering her sister's head. The autopsy performed by experienced pathologists concluded that due to their stomachs containing the approximate proportions of their last known meal, both sisters had in fact died within about 5 hours of the time they were last seen at the theater, on either the evening of December 28th or the early morning of the 29th. However, Harry Glass, at the time chief investigator for the Cook County Coroner's Office, disagreed with the time of death. He pointed to a thin layer of ice found in the bodies of the girls as indicating that they had been alive until at least January 7th, since only after that date would there have been snowfall enough to react with their warm bodies and create the ice layer, let alone hide the bodies until their discovery. There were no obviously fatal wounds on either girl's body and nothing to indicate that they had been drunk, drugged, or poisoned. Despite being very clean, both corpses had various bruises and rodent bites, including 3 puncture wounds in Barbara's chest that may have come from an ice pick. It was also later revealed by authorities that Barbara at least had likely had sexual intercourse around the time of her death, but no evidence of forcible molestation was found. Cause of death was finally determined to have been due to secondary shock resulting from exposure. Edward Lee Badwell was a 20-year-old illiterate drifter from Tennessee who allegedly bore some resemblance to Elvis Presley. According to Minnie DeRoss, owner of the D&L restaurant where Badwell had worked as a dishwasher, he was there with the Grimes sisters on the morning of December 30th. Badwell was booked on murder charges on January 27, 1957 after signing a confession stating that he and another man were with the Grimes sisters January 7th, and after 7 days of drinking at West Madison Street, they fed the sisters hot dogs and then beat them to death for refusing their further sexual advances before discarding the bodies on January 13th. Loretta Grimes, mother of the victims, was quoted upon Badwell's alleged confession. "It's a lie. My girls wouldn't be on West Madison Street. They didn't even know where it was." He later withdrew the confession on the grounds that it had been coerced by the sheriff's men. The autopsy reports later supported this confession, as no alcohol or hot dogs were found in the victims' systems, nor had they been beaten to death. Badwell was also clocked in at Ajax Consolidated Company, his place of employment, from 4:19 p.m. on December 28th to 12:30 a.m. on December 29th, covering the time period of the girls' likely abduction and murder. However, Harry Glass, who strongly believed Badwell had in fact committed the murders, later said that the marks found in the bodies had not been adequately investigated. He further theorized that there was evidence that the sisters had been beaten to death, and, in tandem with the evidence of sexual activity, were thus in line with Badwell's claims. Glass claimed that official investigators were covering up these and potential other more lurid details of the case, possibly out of a desire to protect the girls' reputations and or spare their mother's feelings. Similar allegations would be repeated in later years by others, some of who claimed to have seen the original case files. The Chicago Crime Lab, meanwhile, continued to insist that there was no evidence in either girl's case of extreme violence or sexual molestation. Max Flake was a 17-year-old suspect in the case. He voluntarily took a polygraph test and failed it. He allegedly confessed to kidnapping the girls. Police had to let Freer go. He was never charged with the murders because there was no evidence that he killed or kidnapped the girls, other than his alleged confession and the polygraph fail. Max Flea was sent to prison a few years later for the unrelated murder of a young woman. Walter Krantz, a 53-year-old steam fitter, called police on January 15 to say that he had dreamt that the bodies of the girls were in Santa Fe Park at 81st Street and Wolf Road. The park was around 1.5 miles from the true location, where they were to be found 1 week later. Krantz told police that psychic powers ran in his family. After multiple interrogations by the police, he was released. Whatever happened to these girls? That's the big question. Who is responsible for their deaths? That's another question. Anyways, if you have any answers, please let me know. As always, dear viewer, have sweet dreams.